Why do you read countless self-help books, watch motivational videos, and still feel stuck? Because most of what you consume is designed to comfort you, not to wake you up. The truths that actually set you free are the ones that sting. You've been told your whole life to chase happiness, but what if happiness was never the goal? What if freedom only comes when you stop lying to yourself about how life really works? You think avoiding pain will make you stronger, but the opposite is true. The more you hide from hard truths, the weaker you become. And the more you face them, the freer you get. We grow up on stories about heroes. In movies, novels, even childhood fairy tales, the pattern repeats. The main character is lost, broken, or overwhelmed. And then someone powerful appears to rescue them. Maybe it's a wise mentor, a perfect partner, a loyal friend, or some divine force from the universe. Those stories comfort us. They spark the hope that in our darkest moments, someone will appear, take us by the hand, and lift us out of the mess we're in. But when you step into real life, especially in your mid-30s or 40s, you start to see the harsh truth. No one is coming to save you. No miracle will erase your debt. No guardian angel will suddenly hand you a new career. No partner will permanently cure your loneliness. And no savior is going to march into your life and fight the battles you've been avoiding for years. First, this truth feels brutal, like a mirror reflecting back the weakness we've tried to hide. Yet if you dare to face it, you'll discover that it's not a curse. It's the beginning of freedom. From the time we're children, we're trained to rely on others. In school, you raise your hand and wait to be called on. At home, if you break something, a parent or older sibling steps in to fix it. Later in life, society whispers the same comforting script. One day the right opportunity will come. One day the right person will arrive. One day someone will finally see your worth. So we grow up waiting for luck, waiting for recognition, waiting for someone to take responsibility for the life we're afraid to own. The Stoics ripped that illusion apart. Marcus Aurelius, who carried the weight of an empire, wrote in his private journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." He wasn't writing fairy tales. He was giving himself the reminder every adult needs. Your mind is yours. Stop outsourcing your life to the idea of a rescuer. Here's where people get defensive. They hear no one is coming to save you and immediately think it means everything wrong in your life is your fault. That's not the message. Stoicism never claims that every bad thing is your doing. You didn't choose to be born into hardship. You didn't ask for betrayal, layoffs, or illness. Life throws curveballs you couldn't have prevented. But Stoicism insists that while you may not be guilty for what happened, you are responsible for what happens next. That's the pivot. That's where freedom begins. Carl Jung said it clearly. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. You're not defined by the trauma or the injustice. You're defined by your choice after the fact. Do you stand back, up, or do you stay on the ground? Think about a single mother raising 2 children. She didn't choose divorce. She didn't choose abandonment, but she refuses to wait for a savior. She works extra shifts, budgets every cent, and still shows up for her kids with love. She isn't a superhero. She's simply someone who stopped waiting, Or picture a man in his 40s who battled addiction. No mentor came knocking at his door, no miracle intervention rescued him. He fought, one day at a time, through recovery programs, through relapse, and shame through temptation. He clawed his way out, not because someone carried him, but because he chose to move forward, despite the pain. These stories aren't glamorous. They don't fit the Hollywood script, but they're real, and they're proof. The moment you stop waiting to be rescued is the moment you start building your own strength. Modern culture actually makes this worse. We live in what I'd call an outsourcing culture. We outsource our health to doctors, expecting them to fix years of neglect while we refuse to change our lifestyle. We outsource our happiness to our spouse or partner, expecting them to fulfill us while we ignore our own growth. We outsource our career security to corporations, forgetting that jobs can vanish overnight. The more you outsource, the weaker you become. And when help doesn't arrive, despair sets in. The Stoics knew better. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." The obstacle in front of you isn't waiting for someone else to clear it. It is your path, and you're the one who must walk it. Here's the paradox. When you finally accept that no one is coming, you feel lighter. You stop wasting time fantasizing about recognition, validation, or rescue. You reclaim your energy from the endless cycle of waiting. Because now the weight is yours. And strangely, that's good news, because you discover you actually have the legs to carry it. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to keep moving. Nietzsche wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." When you have a reason, your kids, your dignity, your future, you stop looking for a savior. Your why becomes enough. By your late 30s and 40s, you can't afford to keep waiting. Decades can vanish in the blink of an eye. If you don't take ownership now, when will you? The job you complain about won't transform by itself. Your health won't magically rebound. The relationship you avoid confronting won't fix itself through silence. This stage of life forces you to realize nobody is writing a rescue plan for you. If you want change, you build it brick by brick, decision by decision. And here's the tough but liberating truth. You must become the person you once hoped would show up for you. The mentor you wished for, become that for yourself. The protector you longed for, stand up and draw your own boundaries. The opportunity you kept waiting for, create it, even if it's small and imperfect. The statement, "No one is coming to save you," is not meant to crush you. It's meant to wake you up. It's a call to stop outsourcing your life, to stop bargaining with fantasy, and to reclaim the only power you ever truly had. Your ability to act. No, the cavalry isn't coming, but you have arms, legs, a mind, and a reason to live. And when you finally stand up for yourself, you'll realize something profound. You never needed a savior. You just needed the courage to stop waiting. There are nights when everything feels unbearably heavy. You lie in bed with thoughts racing, your chest tight, your heart pounding. You replay conversations, wonder about choices, imagine futures that terrify you. The emotions are real, raw, and overwhelming. You feel exhausted, sometimes even hopeless. And it's in those moments that most people make the same mistake. They assume that because their feelings are intense, life itself must. respond. They think that crying hard enough, worrying long enough, or journaling passionately enough will somehow alter the reality they are facing. But here's the painful truth most don't want to admit: life doesn't bend to emotions. Life responds only to action. That truth can sound cold. To someone drowning in emotion, it almost feels cruel. Yet if you think about it carefully, it is liberating, because while you cannot always choose how you feel, you can always choose what you do. And that choice, your actions, is what ultimately shifts the direction of your life. The Stoics saw this centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." His point wasn't to ignore emotions, but to remind us that debating, feeling, or theorizing means little compared to the simple act of living according to your values. In other words, stop waiting for the right mood. Just do. If you've ever waited for motivation before going to the gym, or inspiration before starting that project, you know what happens. You keep waiting. The right feeling rarely arrives. It teases you with a brief spark one day, then disappears for weeks. Motivation is unreliable. Discipline, however, is steady. And discipline is built on action, not emotion. When you move despite discomfort, when you show up despite fear, you begin to teach your brain a different story. You start proving to yourself that you can act even when your feelings resist. Think of the people you admire in your life, not celebrities, but the resilient ones around you, the single parent who works a second job but still cares for their family, the colleague who continues to show up with integrity even after setbacks, the friend who pushes through grief to keep living meaningfully. Do you think they waited until they felt good? Until they felt fully ready? No, they acted, even with heavy hearts. And that action, repeated again and again, created the momentum that carried them forward. It is easy to confuse emotions with facts. We tell ourselves, I feel tired, so I must be incapable. Or I feel afraid, so it must be too risky. Feelings are valid, yes, but they are not the same as truth. They are signals, not commandments. Modern psychology echoes this. Carl Jung put it simply, you are what you do, not what you say you'll do. Our lives aren't measured by what we feel, or what we plan, or what we intend. They're measured by what we actually carry out. That's why so many dreams die quietly. They are smothered by over-identification with emotions. Think of how many people say they want to change. They want better health, stronger relationships, or a new career. But when the alarm rings early, they negotiate with themselves. When fear rises, they delay. When sadness lingers, they escape into distraction. They confuse waiting for the right emotion with preparing. But preparation is an illusion if it never turns into motion. Real change begins not with feelings, but with the small decision to act. Life doesn't reward intensity of emotion. It rewards consistency of action. You can feel passionately about writing a book for 20 years, but if you never sit down to type, the book doesn't exist. You can feel guilty about neglecting your health, but if you don't alter your habits, nothing changes. You can feel inspired by a video, a sermon, a podcast, but inspiration fades unless it's followed by movement. Action is the bridge between emotion and transformation. Without it, emotions are like sparks that never catch fire. This doesn't. mean you should suppress emotions or pretend they don't matter. They matter. They tell you what hurts, what excites, what matters most to your soul. But their role is to inform, not to govern. Stoicism teaches us to observe our emotions like passing weather. You don't deny the storm. You acknowledge it. But you don't let the storm decide the course of your ship. You choose the direction, and your actions steer the wheel. Let's be practical. Imagine you're lying in bed, overwhelmed by anxiety. You could stay there, spiraling deeper. Or you could choose one small action. Sit up, take a glass of water, write down 3 things you can actually do tomorrow. The anxiety may not vanish, but the action shifts your state. Or consider the person terrified of rejection who never applies. For a new job, they can wait for confidence, but it won't come until after they act. Sending the application, showing up at the interview, that is what builds confidence. Not daydreaming about it. Action isn't glamorous. It's usually small, awkward, sometimes painful. But it compounds. Every repetition is a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. And this is where the real shift happens. Confidence doesn't come from affirmations or hype. It comes from evidence. Each time you act despite not feeling ready, you accumulate proof that you can handle life. That proof rewires your brain, and that new wiring becomes resilience. Think about physical training. No one feels excited for the first workouts. They're uncomfortable, painful, messy. But over time, the body adapts. Muscles grow, endurance increases, strength emerges. The pain wasn't a sign of failure. It was the very mechanism of growth. The same is true of emotional training. You act through discomfort, and your resilience strengthens. This truth is especially critical in your late 30s and 40s. By now, you've realized that waiting for the perfect mood is a waste of precious time. Days pass quickly, years blur, and if you only move when you feel good, you'll waste entire seasons of life standing still. Ask yourself honestly, how much have you postponed because you were waiting to feel ready? How many opportunities slipped away because you let emotions set the terms? Life doesn't care if you're tired, uninspired, or unmotivated. Life measures only what you actually do, and that is empowering, not discouraging, because it means you are not at the mercy of your moods. You are not trapped by bad days. You can feel scared and still act. You can feel sad and still love. You can feel uncertain and still step forward. The Stoics insisted on this practice because it builds a sense of inner freedom. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That reaction is not a feeling, it's an action. When everything feels chaotic, your power lies in the next choice, the next step. When emotions want to freeze you, action melts the paralysis. So here is the challenge. Stop waiting for the perfect emotional climate. If you keep waiting, you'll wait forever. Start moving as if your future depends on what you do today, because it does. Drink the water, make the call, send the email. Step into the conversation. Write the page. Do it not because you feel like it, but because you've decided it matters. And watch what happens. Slowly, consistently, the actions you repeat carve a new identity. You stop being someone who waits. You become someone who builds. At the end of the day, your feelings will rise and fall like the tide, but your actions That's the foundation. They create momentum. They shape your reality. And when you finally accept that truth, you'll stop being ruled by the storm of emotions and start becoming the captain of your own ship. Life does not respond to how deeply you feel. Life responds to what you do again and again, one small step at a time. You know the feeling. You reach the end of the day and you're wiped out, absolutely drained. You collapse on the couch or crawl into bed, convinced that you've worked yourself to the bone. But when you look back, when you actually examine how you spent your time, you realize nothing meaningful got done. You were busy, yes, but busy with what? Scrolling, replying to endless messages, bouncing between tabs, answering minor requests, juggling a dozen small tasks that never really mattered. And so you're left with that peculiar kind of exhaustion that isn't the result of deep effort, but of constant fragmentation. You're not truly tired. You're scattered. This kind of fatigue is one of the most destructive diseases of our modern era. We live in an attention economy where every app, every notification, every headline is engineered to steal your focus. Your brain is pulled in 100 directions before breakfast. You wake up, reach for your phone before your feet touch the floor, check emails while brushing your teeth, scroll through headlines while sipping coffee. By the time you're officially starting your day, your attention is already drained. No wonder you feel exhausted. It's not your body that's burned out. It's your focus that's starving. The Stoics understood this centuries ago, long before the internet. Seneca wrote, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." Think about that. When your attention is scattered across a dozen things, you're not really present in any of them. That's exactly what modern life feels like: constant stimulation without depth, constant noise without progress. It tricks you into believing you're productive while silently draining your energy reserves. We've been conditioned to think that tiredness is solved by more rest, more naps, more vacations, more me time. But rest doesn't fix scattered focus. You could take a 2-week vacation and still return exhausted if you spend that time glued to screens, binging noise, drowning in endless distraction. Because rest without clarity isn't rest. It's just numbing yourself with more clutter. The truth is that what most of us are calling fatigue is really misalignment. It's the ache of living disconnected from our priorities. You say you're tired, but what you're really feeling is the cost of spending all day on things that don't matter. It's not the hours of hard work that drain you. It's the constant leaking of attention into meaningless interactions, trivial arguments, shallow consumption. That's why so many people feel tired even on days when they did very little, because their focus wasn't invested. It was scattered into pieces and given away freely. Let's be honest, our culture glorifies being busy. People brag about long to-do lists and jam-packed schedules. But much of what fills those lists is noise, not necessity. And deep down, we know it. We know the emails could have waited. We know the social media arguments were pointless. We know that hours of scrolling didn't bring us closer to anything real. Yet we repeat the cycle. Why? Because distraction has become our default. We're addicted to it. It feels easier to keep switching tasks than to sit with one thing that truly matters. But here's the paradox. The very act of scattering yourself makes you more tired than sustained effort ever could. Think of your brain like a flashlight. Pointed in one direction, the beam is strong and steady. But if you keep jerking it around in every direction, the light never settles and the battery drains quickly. That's what you're doing to your attention. The solution isn't glamorous, but it's powerful. Simplify. Choose one thing and give it your full focus. Just one. It could be writing a single page, having an undistracted conversation, cooking dinner without checking your phone, or taking a walk with no headphones. When you do this, something remarkable happens. You feel more energized, not less. Clarity replaces fog. Presence replaces exhaustion. That's because your brain isn't designed for endless fragmentation. It's designed for deep, intentional engagement. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's what distraction does. It becomes the unconscious pattern running your life. You think you're choosing freely, but in reality, your habits are choosing for you. The notifications, the quick checks, the mindless entertainment, they silently dictate where your hours go. And then you look up years later, drained, wondering why life feels empty. The Stoics practiced mental discipline, not in a rigid or obsessive way, but in a deliberate, conscious way. They trained their minds like muscles, building strength to resist distraction. That discipline is rare today. We've trained ourselves to avoid boredom at all costs, even though boredom is where insight begins. The silence we keep running from is the very space where our real thoughts live, but we drown it out with constant noise, and then we wonder why we feel disconnected. This doesn't mean you need to become a monk or live off the grid. It means treating your attention as sacred. It means designing your environment so it supports focus instead of sabotaging it. Turn off notifications. Delete the apps that hijack your mind. Set aside time each day to simply sit with your own thoughts. Yes, it will feel uncomfortable at first. Withdrawal always does. But discomfort is the doorway to clarity. And here's something else people rarely acknowledge. Most of your fatigue isn't physical. It's spiritual. It's the dull ache of living out of alignment with what you truly care about. You're not exhausted from effort. You're exhausted from spending your precious energy on things beneath your values. That's why you can work hard on something meaningful and feel tired but fulfilled, yet waste the same amount of time on distractions and feel hollow. The body can recover from hard work, but the soul struggles to recover from wasted life. Look closely at your last week. How many hours were invested in things that really mattered? Deep work, real connection, growth, creation. And how many were leaked away into noise? If your answer depresses you, that's not a reason for guilt. It's a wake-up call, because attention once spent is gone forever. You don't get refunds on days. So what can you do? Start small. Choose one boundary around your attention. Maybe you decide mornings are phone-free. Maybe you limit scrolling to a fixed window. Maybe you carve out 30 minutes for focused work before you open email. These small acts are how you reclaim your life. They teach your mind that you are in charge, not the algorithm. When you do this, you'll notice something powerful. Time begins to stretch. 10 minutes of deep focus feels longer and richer than an hour of shallow distraction. Your brain doesn't remember time, it remembers meaning. That's why one intentional conversation can feel like a milestone, while 3 hours of scrolling vanish without a trace. Most people will keep living scattered, mistaking stimulation for life. But you don't have to. You can choose to direct your focus deliberately. You can choose fewer things done with more presence. You can protect your attention like the currency it is, because in the end, your attention shapes your reality. And if you don't guard it, the world will spend it for you. So the next time you say, "I'm tired," pause and look deeper. Are you truly tired, or are you just scattered? Are you drained from meaningful effort, or from handing out pieces of your attention to everything that doesn't matter? Be honest, and then choose differently. Because the truth is, you have more energy than you think. You've just been leaking it into distractions. Reclaim it. Simplify. Focus. Because that's where strength, clarity, and peace begin. You've probably said it before. Where did the day go? Or worse, you've looked back at the last 5 or 10 years and thought, how did all that time slip away so fast? It's one of the strangest and most unsettling feelings in adulthood. The realization that days, months, even entire decades can vanish almost unnoticed. One moment you're setting goals, making plans, dreaming of change. The next, you're staring at the calendar, wondering how so much life passed without real progress. The truth is that we treat time like it's disposable, like it's something we can waste today and somehow replenish tomorrow. But time isn't like money. You can rebuild finances. You can restore health. You can even repair broken relationships. But time? Time is non-refundable. It is the only real currency you possess, and once it's spent, it's gone forever. Yet, look at how casually we give it away. We hand over our mornings to mindless scrolling, our afternoons to trivial drama, our evenings to shallow distractions. We say yes to commitments we don't care about, spend hours with people who drain us, and let day after day pass without doing anything that truly moves us forward. Imagine if someone gave you $1,000 every morning with one condition: you had to spend it wisely before midnight, or it would disappear. You'd think carefully about where that money went. But life gives you something far more valuable: 86,400 seconds each day. And most people don't even think twice before trading it for nonsense. The Stoics were obsessed with this. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." He wasn't being poetic. He was warning. You see, he knew the problem isn't the length of life, it's how we treat it. We complain that there isn't enough time, but the reality is that we don't use the time we already have. It's not a shortage. It's a mismanagement. And here's the brutal truth. If you don't learn to value your time, someone else will happily use it for their own agenda. Every quick favor, every just 5 minutes, every meaningless meeting, these are withdrawals from your life account. And unless you guard it, you'll wake up realizing that your most valuable asset has been spent on things that didn't matter. Carl Jung once said, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent." It isn't only about parenting. It's about potential. When people spend years postponing the things that matter, waiting for a perfect moment that never arrives, their unlived life becomes a weight. And that weight doesn't just vanish, it ripples outward into families, communities, generations. Every day you trade for distractions is a day you're not investing in the person you could become. Think about what time really is. It's not just numbers on a clock or days on a calendar. It's your life measured out second by second. Every choice you make is a stroke on the painting of your existence. And the picture you're creating depends on what you prioritize. Spend most of your hours reacting to other people's demands, and you'll end up with a life that feels accidental. Spend your hours intentionally, and you'll craft something meaningful. Fate isn't what steals your time. Small unconscious choices do. The good news is that you don't need to overhaul your entire schedule overnight. You just need to reclaim a little at a time. 1 hour used with intention today can alter the course of your entire year. One boundary set this week can create space for creativity, growth, or real connection. It's not about cramming in more activities. It's about ensuring that the activities you choose actually matter. Quality always beats quantity. Imagine if even 30 minutes of your day were carved out for deep work, for authentic connection, or even for silence. That tiny shift could change the way you feel about your life. The Stoics often spoke about living according to nature, not hugging trees, but aligning with what is essential to a well-lived life. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." He wasn't being morbid. He was motivating himself. He knew that death makes life urgent. When you remember that time is finite, suddenly the nonsense falls away. The endless attempts to please everyone, the toleration of mediocrity, the hours wasted on trivialities, they lose their grip. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of the time when you say, "I don't have time," what you really mean is, it's not a priority. And that's fine. But be honest about it. Don't complain about being too busy while binge-watching shows you've already seen. Don't tell yourself your dream is out of reach if you're not giving it even 20 minutes a day. Time reveals your real values, not the ones you talk about, but the ones you live. For those of us in midlife, this reality hits harder, because by now you've seen how quickly years can evaporate. You've already experienced looking back and wondering how a decade slipped by. And you know the painful truth. There are fewer decades ahead than behind. That's not meant to depress you. It's meant to focus you. You don't have endless tomorrows. You have today. What will you do with it? You don't owe your time to everyone who asks for it. You don't need to explain every no. You don't need to feel guilty for choosing solitude over shallow social noise. Protecting your time isn't selfish. It's survival. It's wisdom. It's self-respect. Your life isn't a community garden where anyone can plant their weeds. It's your carefully cultivated space, and you get to choose what grows there. When you begin to honor time as the sacred currency it is, everything changes. You stop glorifying busyness. You stop treating overwhelm as a badge of honor. You stop letting trivial requests hijack your day. You start building a schedule that reflects the person you want to become, not just the demands of the moment. And you begin to notice that time itself feels different. 10 minutes of doom scrolling evaporates instantly, but 10 minutes of meaningful reflection can feel like a gift. Your brain doesn't measure time, it measures meaning. That's why some days vanish into a blur, while others feel etched into memory. So the challenge is this: stop treating time like an unlimited resource. It isn't. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. It never arrives. Stop handing over your hours to people, habits, and distractions that don't deserve them. Begin today this day to guard your time with the seriousness it deserves. Because at the end of your life, the most painful realization won't be that you failed. It won't even be that you struggled. The most painful realization will be that you wasted it, that you gave away your hours to things and people that never mattered. Don't let that be your story. Value your time. Protect it. Spend it on what aligns with your deepest values, because time is the only real currency you'll ever own. And once it's gone for good. Most people live their lives arranging every day around comfort. We don't even notice it. We hit snooze instead of waking up early. We scroll our phones to avoid being alone with our thoughts. We keep quiet instead of saying the hard truth that might upset someone. Comfort is seductive because it feels safe. It whispers that you're fine as you are, that you don't need to stretch, that staying cozy is a form of peace. But here's the reality. What feels like peace is often just avoidance in disguise, and avoidance doesn't build strength. It builds weakness. If you truly want growth, you must accept one fact: growth will always feel like discomfort. Think about any time you've ever transformed in your life. Did it happen on vacation? On the easy days when everything was smooth and effortless? Probably not. Real growth happened when something forced you out of your safety bubble. The heartbreak that broke you open, the job loss that made you rethink your purpose, the health scare that demanded you finally take care of yourself. Those moments were painful, sometimes devastating, but they also burned away your excuses. They demanded a choice, hide or rise. And in choosing to rise, you discovered strength you didn't know you had. The Stoics never sugarcoated this. Epictetus said, "Difficulties are things that show a person what they are." That means adversity isn't an accident. It isn't a punishment. It's the forge where your character is tested, where your resilience is revealed. Modern psychology echoes this. Carl Jung wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Awakening, becoming fully alive, requires passing through discomfort. There's no shortcut. The problem is that we live in a world obsessed with ease. Faster food, quicker results, life hacks, shortcuts to success. Everything is designed to minimize friction. And while convenience can be nice, it comes with a hidden cost. It robs us of resilience. It makes us fragile. When the slightest difficulty arises, we panic. We haven't trained for hardship, so we crumble under its weight. That's why Stoicism is so powerful today. It reminds us that discomfort isn't the enemy. It's the mechanism of growth itself. Think about the gym. Lifting weights literally tears your muscle fibers so they can rebuild stronger. If you avoid the burn, you avoid the growth. The same applies to life. The difficult conversation you keep avoiding is the weight you need to lift. The boundary you haven't set is the resistance you need to face. The project you've delayed is the workout for your discipline. Avoiding them may feel easier now, but every time you run from discomfort, you reinforce the belief that you can't handle it. And over time, that belief shrinks your confidence, shrinks your world, shrinks you. On the other hand, every time you choose discomfort, every early morning you don't want to get up, every hard choice you make, every awkward first step into something new, you're rewiring your brain. You're telling yourself, See, I can handle this. That's where confidence comes from. Not from imagining change, not from talking about it, but from walking through it. That's why Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The obstacle isn't blocking your path, it is the path." Consider someone who wants to build a new career. They dream about it, research endlessly, maybe even take a course. But when it comes time to actually apply, to face rejection, they freeze. They convince themselves the discomfort is a sign they're not ready. But discomfort isn't a warning. To stop, it's a signal that you're moving in the right direction. Growth always comes dressed as resistance. And here's the irony. When you choose to face discomfort regularly, life actually becomes easier. Not because challenges vanish, but because you become tougher. You stop flinching at every setback. You stop needing the world to be soft in order for you to be strong. That's the secret. The more you train yourself to lean into the hard things, the less power they have over you. Of course, this doesn't mean chasing pain for the sake of it. Stoicism isn't about masochism, it's about clarity. It's about recognizing that the life you want is waiting on the other side of discomfort. The health you want lives on the other side of sweating and sore muscles. The relationship you want lives on the other side of honest, vulnerable conversations. The freedom you crave lives on the other side of boundaries you've been afraid to set. None of it is hiding in the easy path. It's hiding in the very places you're most resistant to go. So ask yourself honestly, what am I avoiding right now because it feels uncomfortable? What growth have I postponed because the process doesn't feel good? Maybe it's the doctor's appointment you've been delaying. Maybe it's the apology you owe someone. Maybe it's the dream project still sitting untouched because starting feels terrifying. Whatever it is, that's your training ground. That's where your next level lives. At midlife, this lesson becomes even more urgent. By your late 30s and 40s, you know that time is limited. You can't afford to keep postponing growth just because it's uncomfortable. The price of avoiding it is too high. It's not just wasted years, it's wasted potential. It's a smaller life than the one you could have lived. Here's the truth. Discomfort won't kill you, but comfort might. Comfort might lull you into stagnation, into years of repetition, into living the same safe year over and over, until suddenly decades are gone. Discomfort wakes you up. It forces you to evolve. It pushes you to discover new strength. And while it hurts in the short term, in the long term it builds a life of depth, resilience, and freedom. The next time you feel resistance, pay attention. That resistance is a compass. It's pointing towards something meaningful. Don't run from it. Step into it. Not recklessly, not all at once, but steadily. One small step at a time. Write the email. Start the project. Set the boundary. Take the risk. Each action may sting, but each sting is also a seed. And over time, those seeds grow into the version of you who doesn't just survive discomfort, but uses it as fuel. Because that's the point. Growth is not about avoiding the burn. It's about learning to breathe through it, to trust that it's shaping you, to see it as a teacher instead of an enemy. And if you can adopt that mindset, you'll stop chasing comfort like it's the goal. You'll start chasing discomfort like it's the key. And in a way, it is. Because every great transformation in history, personal or collective, began with someone choosing to endure discomfort for the sake of becoming more. So the challenge is simple, though not easy. Lean into the discomfort. Choose it when it appears. Let it sharpen you. Let it stretch you. Let it remind you that you're alive and still capable of becoming more. Comfort may feel good in the moment, but it never changed anyone. Discomfort, on the other hand, is the birthplace of every strong, wise, and resilient person you admire. If you want to join their ranks, stop running from the burn. Let it guide you. Let it grow you, because growth always feels like discomfort. And that's how you know it's real. There comes a time in life when you notice something unsettling. The places, people, and routines that once felt like home no longer fit. The group chat that used to make you laugh now leaves you drained. The nights out that once felt exciting now feel empty. Even the habits that once brought comfort now feel like anchors. At first you wonder what's changed. Was it them? Was it you? Then comes the guilt. You feel bad for pulling away, for wanting something different, something deeper. But here's the truth you need to face. It's not betrayal. It's growth. What once fit the older version of you may not fit the person you are becoming, and that's okay. That's not selfishness. That's evolution. Growth doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it shows up quietly, as restlessness, as unease, as a craving for more meaning and depth. And often that growth requires letting go of things you once held close, friends who no longer align with your values, environments that once felt thrilling but now feel small, habits that once helped you survive but now prevent you from thriving. It's tempting to cling to those things, to keep playing a role in a story that no longer inspires you. Familiarity feels safe, even when it's suffocating. But if you're constantly editing yourself just to stay in those circles, you'll never discover who you're meant to be. Marcus Aurelius observed, "Observe constantly that all things take place by change. Life by its very nature is transformation. You are not who you were 5 years ago. And that's not a problem, it's the point. You are supposed to evolve. Sometimes that evolution means drifting away from people who don't see you anymore. Not because you're better than them, not because they're wrong, but because your path is moving in a different direction. Growth demands a different rhythm, a new level of self-respect. It can feel cruel to admit that some friendships no longer serve you. It can feel harsh to admit that some environments limit you, but refusing to admit it is worse. Because that refusal traps you in a version of life you've already outgrown. You may feel guilty for outgrowing people, especially when there's history, shared memories, love, loyalty. But growth doesn't erase gratitude. You can appreciate what someone gave you and still recognize that the connection no longer supports your highest self. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Becoming who you are meant to be will sometimes require walking away from roles you once played. Roles that were necessary then but limiting now. Here's the hard part. When you begin to set boundaries or step back, people will react. Some will guilt you. They'll say, "You've changed." Others will accuse you of being selfish or distant or difficult. But often those reactions are proof that your growth is working. You're no longer shrinking yourself to keep them comfortable. you're disrupting a pattern. And patterns rarely break without resistance. Think of a snake shedding its skin. It doesn't do this because it hates the old one. It does it because it cannot expand within it. That's what outgrowing is. It's not rejection of your past. It's honoring your future. But if you keep forcing yourself to squeeze into spaces you've outgrown, you'll suffocate your potential. You'll water yourself down. You'll dim your light. And slowly, resentment will build. You'll resent yourself for wanting more, and you'll resent them for holding you back. But here's the beautiful twist when you embrace growth. You make space for new energy, new people, new experiences that match your current self, not your past identity. It might feel lonely at first. Solitude often does. But solitude is not emptiness. It's recalibration. It's the space you need to listen to your soul, to rediscover your rhythm, to align again with your values. Seneca advised, associate with people who are likely to improve you. That doesn't mean abandoning friends when they're struggling. It means being mindful about who gets access to your energy. Do you leave conversations inspired or drained? Do you feel seen, or do you feel you must shrink? Your environment is either nourishing your growth or stunting it. And you owe it to your future self to choose wisely. Yes, you'll question yourself. Yes, you'll miss the comfort of the familiar. Yes, you'll grieve versions of yourself that no longer fit. But growth always comes with discomfort. And that discomfort is a signal you're moving forward. Because if nothing feels uncomfortable, you're probably not evolving. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "The snake which cannot cast its skin has to die." He didn't mean physical death. He meant spiritual stagnation. If you refuse to shed what no longer fits, you suffocate the possibility of becoming more. Not all loss is tragedy. Some loss is necessary. Some loss is sacred. So if you feel the pull to change, don't ignore it. Even if it's messy, even if it means walking alone for a season, the solitude you fear is not punishment. It's preparation. And on the other side, you'll find the right people, the right spaces, the right opportunities, because now there's room for them. When you cling to what's outdated, there's no space for the new to enter. This is your life. Not a rehearsal, not a group project, not a loyalty test to people who prefer the smaller version of you. You don't owe anyone the sacrifice of your evolution. The people meant for your journey won't need you to stay small to keep them comfortable. They'll rise with you, or at the very least, they'll respect your path even if they don't walk it. So release the guilt. Release the fear. Celebrate the fact that you are growing. Letting go isn't betrayal. It's an act of self-respect. It's a declaration that you will no longer shrink to fit. And in choosing that, you reclaim your future. You create space for the life that is waiting for you, not the one you've already outgrown. We often talk about wanting peace as if it's some magical state we might stumble across. We imagine it's waiting for us on a vacation, hidden in a perfect playlist, or locked inside a meditation app. But peace isn't something you randomly find. Peace is something you build. And like anything worth building, it requires structure. That structure is boundaries. Without boundaries, life becomes open terrain, a place where anyone can walk in with their drama, their negativity, their urgency, and leave it at your doorstep. And slowly, without realizing it, you start to confuse constant availability with kindness. and self-abandonment with compassion. This is why so many people feel drained, not because of what they're doing, but because of what they're allowing. When you don't have boundaries, you live in chaos. And the painful part is that after a while, you start to believe that chaos is normal. You wake up to messages demanding your attention, spend the day saying yes when you wanted to say no, and fall asleep feeling resentful but unsure why. The pattern repeats until your life feels less like your own and more like a stage where everyone else gets to perform. The Stoics saw peace differently than we do today. For them, peace wasn't about escape or comfort. It wasn't about hiding from the world. It was about alignment, living in harmony with what you can control and releasing everything you cannot. Epictetus put it simply, keep your will in harmony with nature. Translation: stop trying to fix everything outside of you and start protecting what's within you. And one of the most effective ways to do that is through boundaries. Boundaries aren't about shutting people out. They're about letting the right energy in. They're not walls. They're filters. They allow love, respect, and reciprocity to flow, while blocking manipulation, chaos, and disrespect. Setting a boundary isn't cruel. It's honest. It's a way of saying, here's who I am, here's what I value, here's what I can and cannot give. Without that clarity, people will take and take, not always because they're malicious, but because you never drew the line. The hardest part is that when you start to set boundaries, people push back, especially the ones who benefited from you not having any. They'll call you selfish. They'll say you've changed. They'll try to guilt you with lines like, "What happened to you?" Or, "I guess you're too good for us now." But, listen carefully, those reactions are often proof that your boundaries are working. You're disrupting a dynamic that never served you in the first place. Think of your life like a house. Without boundaries, it's like leaving the front door wide open and handing out spare keys to anyone who asks. Some people will respect the space, but others will walk in whenever they want, eat your food, rearrange your furniture, and leave. A mess for you to clean up. Eventually, you feel like a guest in your own home. That's what life without boundaries feels like. The solution is simple, though not easy. Lock the door. Decide who gets in. Decide when. And don't apologize for protecting the space where you live, breathe, and build your future. Setting boundaries begins small. Think of one area in your life where you consistently feel depleted. Maybe it's a relationship that drains you, a work situation where you're constantly overcommitting, or even your own habits of saying yes too quickly. Ask yourself, what is one boundary I've been afraid to set here? Then set it, clearly, kindly, firmly. You don't need to write a speech. You don't need to justify it with paragraphs. Full sentences, full stop. I won't be able to make it. I need some space. That doesn't work for me. That's enough. Boundaries aren't only with other people. You must also set them with yourself. Protect your peace from your own patterns. Limit your time on the apps that hijack your attention. Say no to the impulse to please everyone. Create daily space that belongs to no one but you. That's where peace grows, in those quiet moments, where you get to hear your own thoughts instead of the world's endless noise. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Part of that acceptance means acknowledging your limits. It means admitting that you cannot be everything for everyone, and trying to be is what destroys your joy. You weren't designed to carry the emotional weight of every person you meet. You weren't made to solve everyone's problems. You weren't meant to explain yourself endlessly to people who aren't even listening. You were made to live clearly, deliberately, with your energy intact. Peace is not passive. It doesn't come from hoping the world calms down. It comes from deciding what you will and will not allow. It comes from clarity. Who gets your time? Who earns access to your energy? What behaviors you'll no longer tolerate, even from yourself? These aren't just questions. They're tools. They're the blueprint for a life that feels grounded instead of chaotic. And yes, you might lose people along the way. People who can't respect your boundaries were never respecting you in the first place. They were respecting your compliance. Losing that isn't loss, it's liberation. It's pruning the tree so new, healthier branches can grow. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, don't just ask, "Why am I so busy?" Ask, "Where did I let my boundaries slip?" The next time you feel resentful, don't just complain. Ask, "What am I saying yes to that I really mean no to?" Those emotions are signals. They're maps pointing directly to where your peace is leaking. Follow them. Plug the leaks. Protect the space. Speak the truth. Because here's the reality. No one else is coming to protect your peace for you. That job belongs to you. And when you finally start taking it seriously, everything shifts. The noise gets quieter. The air gets lighter. And life starts to feel like yours again. Not because the world calmed down, but because you did. Have you ever wondered why you feel stuck even though you carry around so many dreams and ambitions? You talk about them. You write them down. You daydream about them on your commute. And yet, month after month, not much changes. That gap between what you want and what you actually do, that's where the truth hides. You are not becoming the person you hope to be. You are becoming the person your habits are shaping. That's the part most of us don't want to admit. We love goals. We love vision boards. We love talking about plans. But at the end of the day, you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Your identity isn't something you can wish into existence. It's something you practice. And that practice lives in the tiny, almost invisible actions you repeat every single day. It's not the grand declarations that define you. It's whether you wake up when the alarm goes off or hit snooze. It's whether you go for that walk, write that one page, cook the meal instead of ordering again, or say no to the thing you know will drain you. These are the bricks you're laying, and whether you see it or not, they're building the person you'll be tomorrow. We lie to ourselves with good intentions. We say, "I'll start next week. Once things calm down, I'll get serious. After this stressful season, I'll focus." But then the season passes, and nothing changes. You say you want peace, but you scroll yourself into anxiety. You say you want clarity, but you fill every quiet moment with noise. You say you want growth, but you run from discomfort every chance you get. Those aren't just isolated choices. They're votes. Every small decision is a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. Skipping the gym once won't make you unhealthy, but skipping it 5 times a week and convincing yourself you'll get back on track Monday, that becomes your identity. The same goes for the opposite. Reading one page doesn't make you a scholar. Writing one paragraph doesn't make you an author. But do it consistently, day after day, and something powerful begins to happen. Those small acts compound. They accumulate into momentum. And eventually you look back and realize you've built an entirely new life, not by massive leaps, but by quiet repetitions. That's why Stoicism focuses so much on discipline. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Decide who you want to become, then make your daily actions match that decision." It sounds simple, but it's radical, because it removes the illusion that identity is some abstract label. It reminds you that who you are is written not in your dreams, but in your habits. Discipline is not glamorous. It's not a highlight reel. It's often boring, repetitive, and uncelebrated, and it requires delayed gratification, which is the opposite of what the modern world trains us for. Social media, instant delivery, streaming platforms, everything around us is designed to make us impulsive. Why wait when you can have it now? Why cook when you can order? Why sit with your thoughts when you can drown them in endless feeds? That environment conditions you to chase quick fixes, but the cost is high, because quick fixes never create depth. They never create mastery. They never create character. If you don't control your habits will control you, and they will take you somewhere, just maybe not where you want to go. That's why the small choices matter more than you think. When you start to keep small promises to yourself, you begin to build real self-respect. Not the kind that comes from praise or compliments, but the kind that comes from knowing you can rely on yourself. That's where confidence is born, not from what others say about you, but from watching yourself follow through. It doesn't require an overnight overhaul. You don't need to change everything at once. In fact, that's unsustainable. What's sustainable is building tiny wins. Drink a glass of water when you wake up. Write for 10 minutes. Walk for 15. Meditate for 5. These things sound insignificant, but they're powerful because they teach your brain one critical lesson: I follow through. And once that belief takes root, everything else becomes easier. Because the hardest battle is not with the world, it's with yourself. When you prove to yourself that you can be trusted, the war is half won. Most people think confidence is built by achievements or recognition, but that's shaky. Achievements come and go. Recognition fades. What doesn't fade is the deep inner, knowing that when you say you'll do something, you actually do it. That is confidence. That is strength. That is discipline. And once discipline becomes part of your identity, you no longer have to negotiate with yourself every day. You simply are the kind of person who does the thing. Look at your last week honestly, not the plans you made. Not the things you meant to do. What did you actually do? Where did your hours go? Who did you become in those hours? And if you kept repeating that same week for the next year, who would you be 12 months from now? The answer to that question is sobering, because it reveals the truth most of us avoid. Your future self isn't built by inspiration. It's built by repetition, by the small, often invisible actions you repeat daily. So stop waiting for the big moment. Stop waiting for some grand breakthrough. Stop waiting for motivation to strike like lightning. Start building identity through small, deliberate habits. Because you are what you do daily. Your words, your intentions, your dreams, they mean nothing if they aren't backed by action. But when action becomes rhythm, when habits become identity, you stop needing motivation. You stop needing constant reminders. You simply live as the person you've chosen to be. That's the invitation. Not to dream bigger, but to live smaller in the sense of focusing on what you can actually repeat. Smaller in the sense of mastering the daily actions that, when stacked over time, become greatness. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be consistent. Because the life you want isn't waiting for some dramatic shift. It's being built right now, and the small, quiet things you do every single day, there's a strange tension we all live with. You walk into a room and suddenly feel like all eyes are on you, as if every move you make is being silently judged. You replay something you said in a meeting last week and cringe. Everyone else is still thinking about it, too. You second-guess a text you sent, imagining the other person analyzing your every word. This is what psychologists call the spotlight effect, the belief that others notice us far more than they actually do. And here's the truth that can both sting and set you free. Most people aren't thinking about you nearly as much as you think they are. That sounds harsh, almost insulting. But it's actually liberating, because the reality is this. People are busy thinking about themselves, busy worrying about how they came across, busy replaying their own awkward moments. The spotlight you imagine shining on you is shining on them too. That embarrassing thing you said last week? Forgotten. That awkward stumble in your presentation? No one's replaying it except you. People aren't cataloging your flaws because they're too consumed with their own. Seneca put it plainly. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Most of the judgment we fear isn't real. It's a projection of our own insecurity. We assume someone is laughing at us, but in truth, they barely noticed. We believe our mistakes are unforgettable, when in reality they've already disappeared into the noise of someone else's life. And yet we shrink ourselves out of fear of this imagined scrutiny. We lower our voices, soften our opinions, play small, not because anyone told us to, but because we convinced ourselves it was safer. But safe isn't always sane. And it's definitely not fulfilling. The cost of trying to be invisible is enormous. You lose your authenticity. You lose your vitality. You lose the chance to live as your true self. Every time you tone yourself down for fear of judgment, a piece of you disappears. And the irony is that the very thing you're running from, the possibility of being judged, is happening anyway. No matter what you do, someone will always have an opinion. Someone will always misinterpret. Someone will always criticize. But their opinion is not your prison unless you let it be. Think about your own regrets. Chances are the moments you regret most are not the times you were too bold. They're the times you held back. The things you didn't say, the risks you didn't take, the ways you didn't show up as yourself. That's the heartbreak. Not failure, but absence. Not rejection, but silence. Not embarrassment, but missed opportunity. The truth is, authenticity is magnetic. People may not like you, but they'll respect you for being real. Because deep down, everyone is tired of the performance, the masks, the polished highlight reels. What resonates most isn't perfection, but presence. When you stand in who you are, unapologetically, you give others permission to do the same. You create a space where honesty feels possible, and that has far more impact than trying to impress. This doesn't mean you should be reckless or inconsiderate. It means you should stop tying your value to how well you fit into other people's expectations. You're not here to be palatable. You're here to be true. There's a difference between humility and self-erasure, between respect and fear. Humility acknowledges your humanity. Self-erasure denies it. Respect honors others. Fear enslaves you to them. Don't imagine how different your life would feel if you stopped living as though everyone was watching. If you stopped editing yourself to avoid imaginary criticism. If you trusted that you don't have to be perfect to be worthy. The Stoics would call this living in accordance with nature, your nature, not someone else's projection. It means accepting your quirks, your flaws, your passions, your unique presence. It means showing up as the whole of who you are, instead of a watered-down version designed to please. Here's the paradox. When you stop trying so hard to be what others expect, you actually become more impactful. Because people can feel the difference between performance and authenticity. They may not consciously name it, but they sense when someone is grounded in themselves. And that's what draws trust. That's what inspires. That's what lingers. The truth that most people don't care as much as you think can feel depressing at first. We want to believe we matter deeply in the minds of others. But if you sit with it, you'll see it as freedom. It means you're not being watched as closely as you think. It means you don't need to obsess over every misstep. It means you can relax, breathe, and live more boldly because the world is not scrutinizing your every move. So the next time you feel that self-conscious tension rising, pause and ask, who am I afraid of disappointing right now? Whose opinion? Am I elevating above my own truth? And what would happen if I let go of that fear? What would happen if I chose to act as if my worth was already secure, as if judgment was inevitable but survivable? Because the truth is, you will be judged, no matter what. So you might as well be judged for being yourself. At the end of the day, most people are too busy trying to survive their own lives to obsess over yours. They're worrying about their own finances, their own relationships, their own insecurities. You are not the center of their world, and that's good news, because it frees you to step out of the imaginary spotlight and back into your own skin. The only person who has to live with your choices every night is you. The only approval that truly matters is your own. So live boldly. Speak freely. Laugh loudly. Not because everyone will love it, but because it's honest. Because it's real. Because it's yours. Most people don't care, and the few who do, they're not the ones you need to shape your life around anyway. There are days when you wake up feeling fine, and then, without any big event happening, a strange heaviness creeps in. You feel anxious, scattered, maybe even irritable. You try to trace it back. Did someone say something? Did anything really go wrong? And then you realize it wasn't one big thing. It was the steady drip of what you've been feeding your mind. Because the truth is this, your thoughts don't appear out of nowhere. They grow out of the soil you've been planting. And your mind isn't a machine, it's a sponge. Whatever you soak it in, that's what it becomes. we rarely think about this. We obsess over what we feed our bodies, but forget what we feed our minds. Yet the inputs are just as powerful. Spend your days surrounded by negativity, gossip, drama, comparison, and chaos, and you shouldn't be surprised when your inner world begins to echo that same noise. The articles you read, the shows you binge, the conversations you participate in, the social media you scroll through, all of it leaves a residue. You can't swim in dirty water and expect to come out clean. The Stoics were way ahead of their time on this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Picture a sponge soaking in dye. The longer it sits, the deeper the color seeps in. That's what happens with your mind. The more negativity you absorb, the more it stains your perception, until you can no longer tell the difference between the noise outside and the voice inside. But the opposite is also true. Feed your mind with clarity, wisdom, and stillness, and you begin to reflect those qualities back into everything you do. This isn't about pretending life is perfect or forcing yourself to think happy thoughts. It's about being intentional with your mental diet. Just like your body depends on the food you eat, your mindset depends on the information you consume. And in a world designed to hijack your attention, being careless with your inputs is like leaving your door unlocked. In a neighborhood of thieves, your peace, your focus, your clarity, they're stolen bit by bit until you wonder why you feel drained without knowing why. Ask yourself, after a long scroll on social media, do you feel more inspired or more insecure? After listening to that podcast, do you feel expanded or enraged? After a conversation with that one friend, do you feel energized or depleted? These signals matter. They reveal the quality of your mental fuel. And if the fuel is toxic, the engine of your life will sputter. The challenge, of course, is that junk information is addictive. Gossip is entertaining. Drama feels exciting. Outrage gives you a temporary rush. It's like fast food for your brain, tasty in the moment, but leaving you sluggish afterward. The more you consume, the more you crave. And soon you don't even realize how starved you are for something richer, something real. That's why curating your mental diet is an act of self-respect. You can mute, unfollow, unsubscribe. You can swap 1 hour of mindless content for 10 minutes of something that nourishes you, a book that challenges your thinking, a lecture that broadens your perspective, even silence itself. Silence is nourishment too. Space is a form of content. When you stop drowning your brain in endless noise, you finally hear your own thoughts. And often those thoughts hold the clarity you've been searching for everywhere else. The truth is, you don't need constant stimulation. You need meaningful input. You don't need 100 hot takes on the news. You need wisdom that grounds you. You don't need endless comparisons to strangers' highlight reels. You need reminders of your own values. The Stoics lived by this principle. They guarded their minds as carefully as a king guards a fortress, because they knew what entered would shape what came out. Think of your life as a garden. Your thoughts are the soil, and every piece of content you consume is a seed. What grows depends entirely on what you plant. Feed your mind gossip and resentment, and you'll harvest bitterness. Feed it wisdom and courage, and you'll harvest resilience. The choice is yours, moment by moment, seed by seed. Modern neuroscience confirms this. The brain literally rewires itself based on repetition. The thoughts you dwell on carve grooves into your neural pathways. Over time, those grooves become highways, making those thoughts easier to travel, which means the more negativity you consume, the more naturally negativity becomes your default. But the more you focus on constructive, empowering content, the easier that becomes your natural state. It's not magic. It's wiring dots, so the question isn't whether you're being shaped. You are. The only question is, by what? By whom? By which voices, which screens, which conversations? If you want to upgrade your thinking, you must upgrade your inputs. And that doesn't mean cutting off everything entertaining. It means curating deliberately, choosing sources that align with your values, not just your impulses, and remembering that sometimes the best input is no input at all, just silence, stillness, space for your soul to breathe. Next time you feel overwhelmed, unmotivated, or mentally scattered, don't just ask, "What's wrong with me?" Ask instead, "What have I been feeding my mind?" Because often the problem isn't you. It's the diet you've been consuming unconsciously. You can't keep filling your head with junk and expect peace to bloom. You can't expect clarity if your inputs are chaos. You can't expect strength if you're constantly consuming things that make you feel small. The good news is that you get to choose. One choice at a time, one video, one book, one conversation, one scroll. Each choice is a seed, and those seeds are writing your future self, whether you notice or not. That's why curating your attention is one of the most powerful disciplines you can practice. It's not glamorous. No one applauds you for clicking unfollow or closing an app, but the rewards show up in how you feel, how you think, how you carry yourself. So guard your mind. Curate your content. Choose your seeds wisely, because whether you realize it or not, you are becoming what you consume, and your future self is living with the harvest. We've all had those mornings when we wake up fired up, ready to take on the world. The energy is electric, the vision is clear, and the day feels wide open with possibility. And then we've all had the opposite mornings. The alarm rings, and every cell in your body screams to stay in bed. The tasks ahead feel impossible, and even the smallest action feels heavy. Most people wait for the first kind of morning. They wait for motivation, for that invisible spark to carry them forward. And in waiting, they lose years of their lives. Because motivation is a liar. It's unreliable, inconsistent, and fleeting. If you keep waiting for it, you'll waste your best opportunities. Motivation sells well because it feels good. The internet is filled with hype videos, inspirational speeches, endless slogans about grinding and hustling. In the moment, they light you up. You feel like you can do anything. But here's the problem. Motivation fades as quickly as it arrives. It's like a sugar high for the soul. You get the rush, but within hours, sometimes minutes, you crash back into inertia. And then you chase the next hit, hoping another spark will keep you going. This cycle can last a lifetime. Hype, crash, repeat. The Stoics cut through this illusion with brutal clarity. Epictetus reminded his students, "No great thing is created suddenly. Lasting strength isn't built in bursts of inspiration. It's built in slow, steady repetition." Marcus Aurelius didn't write, "Wait until you feel motivated." He wrote, At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I am rising to do the work of a human being. That's not a pep talk, that's a command. He knew that waiting for motivation was a trap. The real key is discipline, choosing to act whether you feel like it or not. Think about anything worthwhile in your life. Your career, your relationships, your health. Did motivation alone build them? No. What built them was showing up on the days you didn't want to. The nights you stayed committed instead of distracted. The conversations you had even when you were tired. The workouts you did when you wanted to quit. The trust you built slowly, not in a single passionate speech, but in hundreds of small, consistent actions. That's the truth. Success in anything is boring. It's repetition. It's discipline. It's the quiet grind no one sees. Here's why motivation is so dangerous. It convinces you that if you don't feel ready, you shouldn't act. It whispers that your emotions must align before you move. And in believing that, you postpone your life. You wait for the right mood, the right alignment, the right inspiration, but life doesn't wait. Time doesn't pause until you're ready. The years keep moving, whether you do or not. Modern psychology supports this. Research shows that action often precedes motivation, not the other way around. When you start moving, taking small steps, your brain generates the momentum that creates motivation. You don't think your way into feeling ready. You act your way into it. That's why a 5-minute start can change everything. Write for 5 minutes. Walk for 5 minutes. Make one call. Send one email. Suddenly the heaviness lifts, and what felt impossible starts to feel manageable. But here's the catch. You have to stop worshiping the illusion that motivation is coming to rescue you. It isn't. No one wakes up every day with a burning fire to do what they must. Even champions, artists, leaders, parents, they all face mornings of fatigue, days of doubt, seasons of boredom. What separates them isn't motivation. It's commitment. They've decided to act whether the spark is there or not. Think about a parent waking up at 3 a.m. to care for a sick child. Do you think they feel motivated in that moment? No. They act because the duty matters. Think about the worker who shows up day after day to provide for their family. Do you think they're buzzing with inspiration every morning? Of course not. They act because consistency matters. That's the lesson. Stop tying your actions to feelings. Tie them to values, to commitments, to who you want to become. The uncomfortable truth is that if you only act when you feel like it, you'll rarely act at all. Comfort will always win in the short term. The couch will always be more appealing than the run. The distraction will always feel easier than the focus. Waiting for motivation is really just waiting for life to magically feel convenient. And that day never comes. Discipline doesn't sound sexy. It doesn't make for viral quotes. But it's what actually changes lives. Discipline is the muscle you train every time you act despite resistance. And like any muscle, the more you use it, the stronger it gets. At first, it feels unnatural. You'll argue with yourself, negotiate endlessly, look for excuses. But over time, discipline becomes identity. You stop needing to debate. You simply do. And here's the paradox. When you stop chasing motivation and start practicing discipline, you actually feel more motivated. Because you're no longer waiting. You're building evidence. Every time you follow through, you create proof that you can rely on yourself. That proof generates confidence. And confidence feels like motivation, but deeper, steadier. It's no longer a sugar high. It's a foundation. Look back on your life and ask yourself, how many times did I delay because I was waiting to feel ready? How many opportunities passed because I thought, I'll start when I feel motivated? Now imagine if instead of waiting, you had simply acted. Imagine the skills you could have built, the progress you could have made, the life you could be living right now. That regret is motivation's legacy. It robs you quietly, not in big dramatic moments, but in endless small delays. So here's the challenge. Stop asking, do I feel like it? And start asking, is this aligned with who I want to be? If the answer is yes, do it, no matter how you feel. Stop worshiping motivation like it's the key. It isn't. The key is discipline, consistency, commitment. And those things are always available to you, right here, right now, in the smallest actions of today. Motivation is a liar. It promises energy, but disappears when you need it most. Discipline doesn't lie. Discipline shows up. Discipline keeps its word. Discipline turns ordinary people into extraordinary examples of what's possible. If you want a life that matters, stop waiting for the feeling. Start moving, even without it. Because feelings follow action, not the other way around. And once you embrace that, you'll never waste another year waiting for a spark that was never coming. There's a kind of exhaustion that runs deeper than lack of sleep. It's the exhaustion of carrying the weight of the whole world on your shoulders, believing that if you just plan carefully enough, anticipate every possibility, and hold tightly enough, you can bend life into shape. You lie awake at night, playing out scenarios, rehearsing conversations, worrying about outcomes you can't possibly predict. You check and recheck, micromanage, obsess, because somewhere inside you've convinced yourself that if you don't control everything, everything will fall apart. And yet the irony is clear. The more you try to control, the less peace you have. The tighter your grip, the more fragile you feel. This is one of life's harshest truths. No matter how disciplined, intelligent, or resourceful you are, most of what happens in the world is outside your control. The Stoics knew this intimately. Epictetus began his teachings with what's known as the dichotomy of control. Some things are up to us and some things are not. Our thoughts, our choices, our actions, those are ours. The opinions of others, the events of tomorrow, the twists of fate, those are not. Suffering grows when we confuse the two, when we waste our energy trying to dominate the uncontrollable while neglecting the only thing we can truly steer ourselves. Think about how much of your stress comes from trying to script what other people will do or say. You rehearse a difficult conversation 100 times in your head, as if the other person will follow your script. You obsess over how someone perceives you, as if you could crawl inside their mind and rearrange their thoughts. You worry about the economy, the weather, the decisions of strangers across the globe, as if any amount of fretting could shift those forces. This kind of control is an illusion, and illusions are heavy. They drain you because they demand energy without offering results. But letting go of control doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean apathy. It means clarity. It means focusing on the circle of influence you actually have. Did you act with integrity? Did you prepare to the best of your ability? Did you live according to your values today? Those are questions you can answer. What others think of you? What tomorrow brings? Those questions belong to the universe, not to you. Trying to own them is like trying to hold back the tide with your hands. You'll end up wet, exhausted, and defeated. Carl Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Many of us unconsciously cling to control because it makes us feel safe. We believe that if we just anticipate enough, we can eliminate uncertainty. But uncertainty isn't a flaw in life. It's the nature of life, and the sooner you accept that, the sooner you'll breathe easier. Imagine two people stuck in a storm. One rages against the wind, cursing the rain, demanding that nature obey. The other pulls their coat tighter, finds shelter, and waits it out. Both feel discomfort, but only one preserves their peace. That's the difference between control and clarity. The first is wasted energy. The second is wisdom. At midlife, this lesson becomes even more urgent, because by now you've seen how little control you actually have. Relationships end despite your best efforts. Careers shift despite careful planning. Health changes, accidents happen, loved ones leave. Life has already shown you that it does not consult your plans before unfolding. And the harder you resist that reality, the more bitterness grows. But when you learn to release the illusion of control, something else grows in its place: freedom. The freedom to live fully in the present moment without constantly trying to rearrange the future. The freedom to let people be who they are instead of trying to bend them into who you want them to be. The freedom to rest, to breathe, to trust that you can handle what comes without needing to know what it will be. That's real strength, not the ability to dominate, but the courage to release. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. This wasn't theory for him. He was emperor, responsible for an empire, surrounded by politics, betrayal, war. If anyone could justify the need to control everything, it was him. And yet he trained himself to focus only on what was his mind, his actions, his choices in the face of chaos. If he could find peace there, so can you. Look closely at your life. Where are you carrying the weight of things that don't belong to you? Whose opinions are you trying to control? What outcomes are you trying to guarantee? What scenarios are you endlessly rehearsing, even though you'll never predict them all? And what would happen if you set that weight down? What would happen if you redirected that energy into living well today, instead of trying to dominate? Tomorrow, it won't be easy. Your mind will resist. It loves the illusion of control because it feels powerful. But each time you release what isn't yours, you strengthen your resilience. You learn to face uncertainty with calm instead of panic. You stop wasting energy on the impossible and start investing it in the possible. And slowly you realize that peace was never about controlling life. It was about controlling yourself. The truth is you don't need to control everything. You never could, and you never will. What you need is to accept your limits, focus on your lane, and trust yourself. to respond with strength no matter what comes. When you live this way, life becomes lighter, not because it's easier, but because you've stopped dragging unnecessary weight. The storms still come, but you no longer try to command the sky. You stand firm, you act wisely, and you let the rest move as it will. That's not weakness. That's freedom, and it's waiting for you the moment you stop clinging to what was never yours to control. Every relationship you've ever had, whether with family, friends, colleagues, or partners, has been shaped by one unspoken truth. People learn how to treat you by watching how you treat yourself and by seeing what you tolerate. This can be difficult to admit because it forces you to face the uncomfortable reality that many of the patterns in your life are not accidents. They are reflections. If you accept disrespect, you invite more of it. If you continually forgive without accountability, you encourage repetition. If you hide your needs, you silently train others to ignore them. It's easy to blame others for the way they behave. And yes, their actions are their responsibility. But your boundaries or lack of them are your responsibility. Every time you allow someone to cross a line without consequence, you teach them that the line doesn't really exist. Every time you abandon your own standards to keep the peace, you reinforce the idea that your peace is negotiable. And over time, the world takes you at your own word. It treats you exactly as you've shown you're willing to be treated. This is not about becoming combative or cold. It's about clarity. It's about embodying your values so consistently that no one has to guess where you stand. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." People hear what you say, but they believe what you live. If you say you value respect, but constantly allow yourself to be dismissed, the lesson isn't your words, it's your silence. If you say honesty matters, but you avoid hard truths, the lesson isn't your ideals, it's your avoidance. Actions teach louder than declarations. Think about the relationships in your life right now. Are there places where you feel consistently unseen, unheard, or undervalued? Chances are those dynamics didn't form overnight. They formed through repetition, small moments where you swallowed your feelings, brushed off the disrespect, convinced yourself it wasn't worth making a fuss. One skipped confrontation becomes 10, then 100. And suddenly you're living in a reality you never consciously chose but silently allowed. Carl Jung once said, "What you accept from others becomes your reality." The people around you mirror back the standards you enforce. If your standard is self-neglect, you will attract those who exploit it. If your standard is self-respect, you will attract those who honor it. And if someone refuses to rise to that level, the distance that forms isn't loss, it's clarity. The hardest part of this truth is the transition. When you begin to raise your standards, when you start setting real boundaries, people will notice. Some will respect it immediately, grateful for the clarity. Others will resist. They'll say you've changed. They'll accuse you of being difficult. They'll guilt you for not playing the old role anymore. But understand this, the pushback is not a sign you're wrong. It's a sign you're finally living in alignment. You are disrupting the version of yourself that kept them comfortable. And while it may feel painful, it's also proof that you're teaching them a new lesson, one rooted in respect instead of appeasement. This doesn't mean you need to explain yourself endlessly. Boundaries don't require justification. They require consistency. A simple, firm no carries more power than a long-winded defense. A single act of walking away speaks louder than 100 warnings. People may test your boundaries, but they'll believe your actions. If you enforce them once, they'll notice. If you enforce them consistently, they'll adapt or they'll leave. Either way, your life becomes healthier. Look back on your own experiences. The times you lost respect for someone likely weren't because of their mistakes, but because they tolerated mistreatment too long. The same is true for you. Self-respect is contagious. When others see that you value yourself, it sets a tone. It elevates the relationship. It creates an environment where respect is the baseline, not the exception. And if someone refuses to meet that baseline, their absence is a form of protection. At midlife, this truth becomes even more crucial, because by now, you know that time is too precious to waste on relationships that drain you. You don't have decades to keep teaching the same painful lesson. You have this moment, this season, to decide, what will I allow and what will I no longer tolerate? Every day you continue old patterns, you reinforce them. Every day you choose differently, you retrain the world. Think of it like training a muscle. The first time you assert a boundary, it feels awkward, even painful. You worry about being disliked. You fear rejection. But the more you practice, the stronger you become. And just like physical training, the discomfort is a sign of growth. Over time, respect becomes the new normal. And once you taste the peace that comes with living aligned to your standards, you'll wonder why you ever settled for less. Here's the liberating part. Teaching people how to treat you isn't about controlling them. It's about controlling yourself. You can't force others to respect you, but you can refuse to engage with those who don't. You can't guarantee love, but you can guarantee self-respect. You can't dictate how others behave, but you can dictate what you allow into your space. And that shift from trying to change others to changing what you permit is where true power lives. So pay attention. Where in your life have you been teaching the wrong lesson? Where have you been silently signaling that disrespect is acceptable? And what new lesson do you need to begin teaching, not through speeches, but through actions? The people who value you will adapt. The people who don't will drift away. And both outcomes are gifts, because they leave you surrounded by relationships that reflect your worth. At the end of the day, you're the professor of your own life. Every interaction is a classroom, and every choice is a lesson. Teach others that your time is valuable, and they'll stop wasting it. Teach others that your voice matters, and they'll listen. Teach others that your boundaries are firm, and they'll respect them, or reveal themselves as unworthy of your presence. Either way, you win. Remember, you are always teaching people how to treat you. Do it consciously. Do it courageously. Do it with self-respect as the lesson plan. Because the way you live doesn't just shape your life, it sets the standard for everyone who enters it. We live in a world overflowing with advice. Open your phone, and there are 1,000 voices telling you what to do, how to eat, how to work, how to love, how to heal, how to live. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone seems certain. And when you're vulnerable, uncertain, or searching, it's tempting to cling to those voices as if they hold absolute truth. But here's the reality. Advice is rarely about you. It's about the person giving it. It's shaped by their fears, their history, their values, and their worldview. What they tell you says more about them than it does about your path. This doesn't mean advice is worthless. It means advice is a mirror. When someone warns you not to take risks, it may be their fear of failure speaking, not your reality. When someone tells you to play it safe, it may come from their desire for stability, not from what you actually need. When someone insists their way is the only way, it often reflects their own insecurities, not universal wisdom. That's why blindly following advice can be dangerous. It can pull you away from your own instincts, your own clarity, your own truth. The Stoics understood this tension well. Epictetus reminded his students, "Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." In other words, advice has value only when filtered through identity. If you don't know yourself, you'll be pulled in every direction by the noise of others. One friend tells you to quit your job and chase your dream. Another tells you to be practical and stay put. Who's right? Neither. Both. It depends on you. The advice is just a reflection. The real answer lies in who you are and what season of life you're in. Think of advice like clothing. A jacket may be warm and useful for one person, but suffocating for another. A pair of shoes may fit your friend perfectly, but give you blisters. Just because something fits them doesn't mean it fits you. Yet so many of us wear other people's advice like hand-me-downs, even when it clearly doesn't suit us. And then we wonder why we feel uncomfortable in our own lives. Carl Jung once said, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another." There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. That's the crux of it. Advice is always filtered through someone else's size, shape, and scars. If you forget this, you risk letting their limits become your limits. Their fears become your fears. Their failures become your roadmap. But if you remember this, you can listen openly without surrendering your agency. Here's how to approach advice wisely. First, listen without defensiveness. Dismissing every opinion outright makes you blind to wisdom. Even flawed advice may carry a useful seed. Second, filter it through your own values. Does this align with who I am, or is it pulling me away from myself? Third, test it. Advice doesn't need to be accepted wholesale. You can experiment, try it on, see how it feels. If it helps, keep it. If it doesn't, release it without guilt. The danger comes when you outsource your life entirely to others. When you believe that someone else must know better simply because they speak with confidence. Remember this, confidence and accuracy are not the same thing. People can be absolutely certain and absolutely wrong. The internet is full of them. Certainty is often just louder insecurity. Don't mistake volume for truth. At midlife, this lesson matters even more. Because by your 30s and 40s, you've realized that no one has it all figured out. Even the people who give you advice are still stumbling, still questioning, still carrying their own baggage. That doesn't make their perspective useless, but it should make you cautious. Blind obedience is the enemy of wisdom. Discernment is its ally. Think about the advice you've received over the years. Stay in that job. It's safe. Don't try that. It's too risky. Be realistic. Some of it may have saved you from disaster. Some of it may have kept you small. And sometimes the very advice that scared you away was a reflection of what the giver never had the courage to attempt. Their warning wasn't about you. It was about their unfinished business. If you don't recognize that, you'll inherit their fears as if they're your own. This doesn't mean rejecting all counsel. Wisdom often comes through others. A mentor, a book, a teacher, a friend, all can point you toward insight you couldn't see alone. But the key is balance. Seek input, but don't surrender your compass. Listen, but don't abandon discernment. Advice should illuminate options, not dictate outcomes. The Stoics themselves sought wisdom from one another, but they always brought it back to practice. Philosophy wasn't about clever sayings, it was about living. You test advice not by debating it endlessly, but by applying it and seeing if it holds. Does it bring more peace? Does it bring more alignment? Does it build resilience? If yes, it's worth keeping. If no, it was never yours to begin with. So the next time someone gives you advice, pause before you accept it. Ask yourself, is this a reflection of my values or theirs? Is this guidance or projection? Is this expanding me or shrinking me? Those questions protect you from inheriting someone else's limits. They keep you anchored in who you are becoming, instead of who someone else wishes you were. At the end of the day, advice is just data. You are the interpreter. You are the filter. You are the one who must decide what belongs to you. If you remember that, you'll never be misled for long. Because while advice can be helpful, it is never absolute truth. The only truth that matters is the one you discover by living, by making choices, by learning from mistakes, by walking your own path. Listen widely, discern carefully, and then live courageously. That's how you turn advice into wisdom without losing yourself in the process. There's a quiet thief that steals more dreams than failure ever could. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand attention, but it creeps in slowly, wrapping itself around every decision you try to make. It's called overthinking, and while it disguises itself as intelligence, as carefulness, as preparation, the truth is much harsher. Overthinking is just delayed living. Every moment you spend looping in your head is a moment. You aren't moving forward in reality. We convince ourselves that thinking more will bring clarity, that if we just analyze the situation from one more angle, if we consider one more possibility, we'll finally feel certain. But certainty never comes. The more you think, the more options appear, the more doubts multiply, and the more paralyzed you become. It's like quicksand. The harder you struggle for perfect clarity, the deeper you sink. And all the while, life moves on without you. The Stoics understood this trap. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Overthinking is precisely that. Suffering in advance, creating pain in your head that doesn't even exist in the real world yet. You rehearse failures that haven't happened. You worry about judgments no one has made. You live inside scenarios that may never come. And what do you gain? Nothing but wasted time and stolen peace. Carl Jung once observed, "Thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge." But in our age, thinking itself has mutated. We don't simply think, we ruminate. We churn the same thoughts over and over, mistaking motion for progress. It's mental busywork, and it leaves us exhausted. But the exhaustion isn't from action. It's from an action disguised as preparation. Think about the decisions you've delayed. Maybe it was leaving a job you hated. Maybe it was starting a project you kept telling yourself you weren't ready for. Maybe it was ending a relationship you knew was wrong. How much time did you lose in your head, circling, debating, waiting for the perfect moment? And what happened when you finally acted? More often than not, the outcome wasn't nearly as catastrophic as you imagined. In fact, the action itself, finally doing something, brought more clarity than all the hours of analysis ever did. That's the paradox. Action creates clarity, not the other way around. You don't think your way into a new life. You act your way into it. A single small step teaches you more than months of speculation, because reality is feedback. Your mind is only imagination, and imagination without action becomes a prison. The reason overthinking feels so seductive is because it tricks you into feeling safe. If you never act, you never risk failure. You never risk embarrassment. You never risk loss. But you also never risk growth. You never risk becoming more. Safety becomes stagnation. And stagnation, over time, robs you of vitality. You end up alive but not really living, present but not progressing. At midlife, this danger is even greater, because by now you've already seen how quickly time slips by. You've already wasted years in hesitation, waiting for more certainty, more courage, more right moments. But there is no perfect moment. There never was. There is only now, imperfect and uncertain, but real. And every delay pushes you further from the life you could be living. The Stoic answer is not to abandon thought altogether, but to shorten the gap between thought and action. Reflect briefly, decide, and move. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that life is finite, that death could come at any moment. That urgency wasn't meant to depress him, it was meant to propel him. When you remember that your time is limited, you stop wasting it in endless mental rehearsals. You stop waiting for conditions that will never align. You start living. Think of it like driving in the fog. You can't see miles ahead, but you can see the next 10 feet. And that's enough to keep moving. Life is the same. You don't need the entire map before you start. You just need the courage to take the next step, trusting that clarity will appear along the way. Overthinking demands the whole map up front. Action trusts the road. So how do you break the habit of overthinking? First, notice it. Pay attention to when your thoughts stop being useful and start being repetitive. Second, set limits. Give yourself a deadline. I'll decide by tonight, or I'll give this 30 minutes, then act. Third, start small. Don't try to solve the whole problem in your head. Take one tiny action, even if it's imperfect. Send the email. Make the call. Write the first line. Momentum will teach you more than endless speculation ever could. Overthinking is a form of fear disguised as wisdom. But wisdom isn't avoiding mistakes. Wisdom is learning from them. And you can't learn if you never move. You can't grow if you never risk. You can't live if you never decide. Ask yourself, if I keep thinking instead of acting, what will my life look like a year from now? 5 years from now? Will I be closer to my dreams or still circling the same questions? Then ask, what's one thing I can do right now to break the loop? Don't wait for confidence. Don't wait for certainty. Just move. Because clarity doesn't come before action. It comes because of it. The truth is, failure won't break you. Rejection won't destroy you. But hesitation will drain you slowly, quietly, and visibly. It will rob you of opportunities before you even try. It will leave you with regrets heavier than any failure ever could. Overthinking is the thief of time, the silent killer of dreams. So stop rehearsing. Stop circling. Stop waiting for perfect. Take the step. Even a small one. Even an imperfect one. Because every action is a key that unlocks the next door. And behind those doors is the life you've been postponing while trapped in your head. Overthinking equals delay, and delay equals loss. Don't let that be your story. There's a dangerous hope many people hold on to, and it sounds something like this. If I stay here long enough, maybe it will get better. Maybe they'll change. Maybe this time will be different. You tell yourself that healing can happen in the very space that broke you, that if you just wait patiently, keep forgiving, keep adjusting, the pain will eventually transform into peace. But here's the truth you may not want to hear. You cannot heal in the same environment that wounded you. You cannot find peace in the place that keeps reopening the wound. Healing requires distance. It requires change. It requires walking away. This is one of the most difficult lessons to accept because it forces you to let go of the fantasy of repair. We want to believe that toxic workplaces will suddenly value us, that broken relationships will suddenly respect us, that destructive habits will somehow nurture us if we just give them another chance. But hoping for that is like trying to recover from smoke inhalation while still standing inside the burning house. No matter how much you want it, the air is poisoned, and the longer you stay, the more damage you take. The Stoics spoke often about choosing your environment carefully. Seneca warned, associate with those who will make a better man of you, not because others are evil, but because influence is powerful. If the people around you constantly pull you into negativity, you will not rise above it. If your environment constantly triggers your old wounds, you will not miraculously heal inside it. Growth requires space, sometimes physical, sometimes emotional, sometimes both. Think about relationships that consistently drain you. You leave the interaction feeling smaller, weaker, less certain of yourself. You try to rationalize it, tell yourself you're overreacting, promise that next time will be different. But the next time comes and the same patterns play out. Why? Because nothing has changed, and you cannot grow in soil that refuses to nourish you. No amount of wishing will turn sand into fertile ground. This isn't just about people. It's about patterns. It's about habits that you keep running back to, even though they hurt you. It's about places that feel familiar, but keep you stuck. Healing demands that you disrupt the cycle. You can't overcome addiction if you keep surrounding yourself with the same triggers. You can't move past heartbreak if you keep rereading old messages. You can't rebuild self-respect if you keep returning to people who don't respect you. Every time you go back, you tell your wound that it doesn't deserve to close. Carl Jung wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." Choosing to heal often means choosing to leave. It means walking away not because you hate, but because you love yourself enough to seek better air to breathe. Leaving doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's simply no longer showing up to arguments. no longer replying to manipulation, no longer justifying your worth to those who can't see it. Healing starts when you stop handing the knife back to the one who cut you. Of course, leaving is terrifying. Familiar pain often feels safer than unfamiliar freedom. At least you know how the hurt works. At least you know the rules of the broken game. Stepping out into the unknown takes courage because it means facing the discomfort of rebuilding. But discomfort is the price of freedom, and staying in the cycle is the price of stagnation. You have to decide which pain you're willing to endure, the sharp pain of change or the dull ache of repetition. This lesson hits especially hard in midlife. By your 30s or 40s, you've lived long enough to see how patterns repeat. You've already given too many second chances. You've already believed too many empty promises. And you've already felt the cost of staying in places that only made you smaller. The question now is whether you'll keep repeating this cycle for another decade, or whether you'll finally choose something different. Healing requires new soil. It requires new energy. It requires walking away from the fire, even if your heart is still attached to the house. It doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you stop allowing harm. It doesn't mean you stop forgiving. It means you stop returning. It doesn't mean you erase your past. It means you stop letting your past dictate your present. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. If the obstacle in front of you is the environment itself, then leaving that environment is the path forward. If the people around you are the wound, then distance is the bandage. Healing doesn't mean erasing the scar. It means letting the scar close so you can carry it without bleeding every time it's touched. So ask yourself honestly, where am I expecting to heal while still standing in harm's way? Which relationships, environments, or habits am I clinging to, even though they've proven again and again that they cannot support my growth? And what would happen if I chose to walk away, not because I want to punish, but because I want to live? It's not easy. It never will be. You'll grieve. You'll question yourself. You'll feel the ache of loss. But remember this, you are not just walking away from something. You're walking toward something, toward clarity, toward peace, toward the possibility of a life not built on pain. Healing is not passive. It doesn't happen by accident. It happens when you take the hard step of leaving behind what broke you and stepping into the unknown that might finally make you whole. You cannot heal in the same place that hurt you. You cannot find freedom while chained to the same patterns that enslaved you. Healing demands movement. It demands courage. It demands letting go. And though it may hurt at first, the air outside the fire is worth it. The light on the other side is real. And once you breathe it in, you'll wonder why you ever stayed in the smoke so long. Wherever your attention goes, your life follows. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but it's one of the deepest truths you'll ever confront. What you choose to focus on day after day doesn't just shape your mood, it shapes your identity. If your attention is constantly locked on fear, you become a fearful person. If your attention is consumed by anger, you become an angry person. If your attention is scattered across distractions, you become scattered yourself. You don't just live your life, you become your focus. Most people underestimate the power of attention. They treat it like a casual resource, something to hand out freely, without realizing it is their most valuable possession. Time may be finite, but even time is filtered through attention. 10 minutes of deep focus feels rich, timeless, and meaningful. 10 minutes of doom scrolling vanishes into nothingness. Same amount of time, different quality of life, because of where your attention was placed. The Stoics saw attention as the foundation of character. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." And what determines the quality of your thoughts? The quality of your attention. Your mind becomes what it dwells on. That's why Marcus reminded himself daily not to waste energy on trivialities. He knew that every moment spent obsessing over gossip, grudges, or vanity was a moment stolen from the work of becoming a better human being. The problem today is that we live in an age of weaponized distraction. Every app, every headline, every platform is designed to hijack your focus. Companies compete for your attention like predators competing for prey, and the cost is that your mind becomes fragmented. You think you're choosing what to focus on, but often your focus is being sold to the highest bidder. And over time, this reshapes your identity. You don't notice it happening, but little by little, you drift into becoming a reflection of the noise you've consumed. Think about it. Spend your mornings scrolling outrage headlines, and suddenly you feel cynical all day. Spend your evenings comparing your life to highlight reels online, and suddenly you feel small. Give your attention to gossip, and soon your inner world is filled with petty thoughts. But reverse it, spend your attention on gratitude, on discipline, on learning, and slowly you become someone more grounded, someone stronger, someone who radiates steadiness in a chaotic world. Attention is alchemy. It transforms whatever it touches into the substance of your character. Carl Jung wrote, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." That applies not only to actions, but also to focus. What you feed attention to is what you quietly do with your mind all day. And that repeated doing minute after minute, hour after hour, writes your identity in invisible ink. Over time, the ink becomes permanent. You can't separate who you are from what you've consistently focused on. Here's the liberating part. You always have a choice. You may not control every thought that flashes through your head, but you control which ones you entertain. You may not control every event, but you control whether you obsess over it or release it. Attention is like sunlight. You decide what grows under it, weeds or flowers, bitterness or strength. It's all about where you shine the light, but choosing wisely requires awareness. And most of us are on autopilot. We don't realize how often our attention is hijacked. We don't notice how quickly we reach for our phones, how easily we slip into worry, how reflexively we replay old grudges. We say we want peace, but we water anxiety with attention. We say we want clarity, but we feed confusion. We say we want resilience, but we invest our energy in distractions. The disconnect between what we want and what we focus on explains so much of our suffering. So the practice is simple, though not easy. Notice where your attention goes and then redirect it. This doesn't mean suppressing thoughts. It means choosing not to dwell. A thought of fear arises, notice it, thank it, let it pass. A thought of anger arises, acknowledge it, but don't build a home for it. Instead, redirect to what strengthens you: gratitude, discipline, purpose. This is mental training, no different from physical training. At first it feels clumsy, but over time, your focus becomes sharper, steadier, more deliberate. At midlife, this truth becomes more urgent. By the time you're in your 30s or 40s, you've already seen how attention shapes character. You've seen how people who dwell on negativity become bitter with age, while those who practice gratitude become luminous despite hardship. You know firsthand how easy it is to get lost in distraction, and you've felt the cost of wasted years. That awareness should sharpen your urgency. You don't have decades to scatter your attention aimlessly. You must choose deliberately now, because your future identity depends on it. Think about who you want to become 5 years from now. Stronger, calmer, wiser? Then look at where your attention goes today. Is it aligned with that vision? Or is it feeding something smaller, pettier, weaker? Because the truth is, your attention is the rehearsal for your identity. You're practicing who you'll become every day by what you focus on. So what can you do right now? Start by auditing your environment. What inputs are stealing your attention? Which apps, conversations, or habits leave you drained? Replace one of them today. Swap 10 minutes of scrolling for 10 minutes of silence. Swap an argument online for a page of a book. Swap worry for action. Do one small thing instead of circling the thought endlessly. These small shifts compound. Slowly, your attention begins to serve you instead of enslave you. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have monk-like focus. You just need to reclaim enough of your attention to direct it toward what matters. Because every moment you redirect is a moment you reclaim your life. And every moment you reclaim becomes part of your identity. The Stoics would tell you, you are not your titles, your possessions, or your circumstances. You are the quality of your mind. And the quality of your mind depends on what you give your attention to. That's the heart of it. Attention shapes identity. And your identity is your destiny. So guard it carefully. Spend it wisely. Direct it deliberately. Because in the end, the person you become will not be defined by what you intended, but by what you continually chose to focus on. Most people think of confidence as something you either have or you don't, like a personality trait you're born with. They imagine confident people walk into every room fearless, speak with ease, and never doubt themselves. And so they wait for the day they'll wake up feeling confident enough to finally take action. But that day never comes, because confidence isn't a feeling you wait for. It's a byproduct of action. It's the residue that builds when you consistently do the things you're afraid of. Think about the times in your life when you've actually felt confident. Was it before you tried something new, or was it after? The truth is, confidence comes after you've shown yourself you can survive discomfort. The first time you spoke in public, your voice may have trembled. The first time you went to the gym, you probably felt awkward and exposed. The first time you stood up for yourself, your heart was likely pounding. Confidence wasn't there at the beginning. It appeared later as proof that you didn't crumble. You acted first, and confidence followed. This is where so many people get trapped. They think, once I feel confident, then I'll apply for the job. Once I feel confident, then I'll speak my mind. Once I feel confident, then I'll take the risk. But they've reversed the order. Waiting for confidence before action is like waiting to get stronger before you ever lift a weight. Strength doesn't precede practice, it comes from it. And confidence is the same dot. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus asked his students, "How long are you going to wait before you demand the best of yourself?" He knew the danger of postponing life while waiting for feelings to catch up. Marcus Aurelius, too, reminded himself daily to act in accordance with his values, not his moods. Neither man waited to feel ready. They moved, trusting that readiness would appear through repetition. Modern psychology echoes this truth. Behavioral science shows that action creates evidence, and evidence creates belief. The more times you prove to yourself that you can act despite fear, the stronger your belief in yourself becomes. That belief is confidence. It's not a speech you recite in the mirror. It's not a burst of adrenaline from a motivational video. It's evidence, built brick by brick. From lived experience, this is why people who have achieved extraordinary things often describe themselves as ordinary. They weren't born fearless. They just practiced facing fear more often. Every small act compounded into trust. Trust in their ability to figure things out, to recover from mistakes, to keep going, even when it wasn't easy. That trust, that quiet inner knowing, is what the world recognizes as confidence. The biggest myth about confidence is that it feels good. In reality, confidence often feels like anxiety, like discomfort, like pushing through resistance. People imagine confidence as calm ease, but more often it's sweaty palms, shaky hands, and a pounding heart while you do the thing anyway. The feeling of ease comes later, once you've built the muscle. Just like lifting weights, at first it burns. It's awkward, it hurts. Only later, after many reps, does strength appear. Think about the most confident people you know. They aren't necessarily the loudest or most extroverted. True confidence is quieter. It's steady. It doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't need applause. And that kind of confidence doesn't come from hype. It comes from repetition, from thousands of small actions aligned with your values, from doing hard things until they stop feeling impossible. So how do you build it? Start by lowering the bar for action. Don't wait until you feel 100% ready. That moment will never arrive. Start small. Speak up once in a meeting. Go to the gym for 10 minutes. Share one honest opinion. Send one application. Each small action is a rep, and each rep builds proof. Over time, those proofs add up into a foundation of trust. Suddenly, you realize you are no longer negotiating with yourself about whether you're capable. You know you are because you've done it again and again. At midlife, this truth matters more than ever, because by your 30s and 40s, you've seen the cost of waiting. You've already delayed too many dreams, held your tongue too many times, passed on too many opportunities because you were waiting to feel ready. How many more years will you let slip away? The clock isn't slowing down. If you keep waiting for confidence, you may wait your whole life. But if you act now, you'll start building the evidence that transforms doubt into strength. The paradox is that people will call you confident long before you feel it. They'll see your actions and assume the feeling came first. But you'll know the truth, that the feeling came last, after fear, after awkwardness, after trembling steps forward. And that's the liberating secret. You don't need to wait for the feeling. You just need to move. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Notice that his guidance is about choices, not feelings. Act in alignment, and the feelings will follow. That's the Stoic way, anchoring your life not in emotions, but in values, actions, and integrity. So the next time you hesitate, waiting for the spark of confidence, remind yourself, it's not coming first. You have to light the fire through action. You have to take the step even with fear in your chest. Confidence is not the precondition. It is the reward. Confidence comes from action, not feeling. And the life you want will be built not on waiting for readiness, but on doing the thing while your hands still shake. That's where the real growth happens. That's where the real identity is forged. And that's the kind of confidence that doesn't fade, because it isn't borrowed, it's earned. When you think back on the people who have shaped your life, what do you remember most? It usually isn't their exact words. It isn't the details of every conversation, or even the specific things they did for you. What lingers is how they made you feel. You remember the teacher who made you feel seen, even if you've forgotten the lessons. You remember the friend who made you feel safe, even if you can't recall every story you shared. You remember the person who made you feel small, dismissed, or unworthy, even if you don't recall the exact insults. Words fade, details blur, but the emotional imprint remains. This truth is both humbling and empowering. It means that your impact on others isn't measured by how clever you are, how perfect your arguments sound, or how much you impress them in the moment. It's measured by the emotional aftertaste you leave behind. Did you leave them feeling valued or dismissed? Did you leave them feeling uplifted or diminished? Did your presence bring calm or chaos? That's what sticks. That's what becomes memory. The Stoics understood this subtle but powerful truth. They lived in a world of debates, arguments, and political maneuvering, but they knew that character wasn't proven in words. It was revealed in presence. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself not just to act with justice, courage, and wisdom, but to embody them in a way that others could feel. Because philosophy isn't about sounding wise. It's about living in such a way that your presence brings peace rather than confusion, clarity rather than noise. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." That's what every interaction really is, a small exchange of energy. And in that exchange, people rarely remember the exact formulas you used. They remember how the reaction felt. Think about your own experiences. The people you admire most probably weren't the ones with the fanciest resumes or the most polished speeches. They were the ones who left you feeling stronger, more hopeful, more grounded after being around them. And the people who hurt you the most often weren't the loudest aggressors, but the ones who consistently left you feeling unseen, dismissed, or drained. Their legacy in your life isn't the detail of what they said, it's the weight of how they made you feel. This truth can be unsettling, because it means you're leaving an emotional footprint on people every day, whether you realize it or not the way you speak to your children in passing, the way you respond to a stranger, the way you listen or don't listen during a conversation. All of it matters, all of it imprints. And you don't need to be perfect, but you do need to be aware, because your legacy isn't just built in grand gestures. It's built in small, ordinary interactions repeated over time. Here's the paradox. You don't need to force being memorable. You don't need to perform kindness to be admired. You simply need to be present, genuine, and intentional. People rarely forget when someone looked them in the eye and truly listened. They rarely forget the relief of feeling safe around you. They rarely forget when you made them laugh in a dark season or gave them dignity when they were embarrassed. These moments don't require brilliance. They require humanity. At midlife, this lesson grows even sharper, because you've lived long enough to feel both sides of it. You know what it feels like to be dismissed by someone who should have cared. You also know what it feels like when a small act of kindness from a stranger lifted your whole day. And now you have to decide which side of that equation you want to stand on. Do you want to be remembered as someone who left people lighter, or as someone who left them carrying more weight? Marcus Aurelius urged himself daily not to let the noise of others disturb his own character. That discipline wasn't just for him, it was for everyone around him. Because when he maintained his inner calm, he could offer calm to others. And that is what people carried with them after he left. That's the legacy anyone can build, no matter their title or station. The legacy of presence. Think of your relationships today. How do people feel after spending time with you? Do they feel judged, or do they feel understood? Do they leave conversations feeling drained or feeling supported? It's not about pretending to be cheerful all the time. It's about authenticity, choosing to show up in ways that reflect your values rather than your impulses. Of course, you won't always get it right. You'll lose your temper. You'll miss cues. You'll hurt people unintentionally. That's part of being human. But awareness allows repair. When you recognize that your impact matters, you take responsibility for it. You apologize when needed. You try again. And slowly, you build a reputation not for being flawless, but for being genuine, for being someone whose presence people trust. The truth is, people won't remember your every achievement. They won't remember your bank balance, your possessions, or even most of your words, but they will remember the way they felt in your presence. They'll remember if you made them feel small or seen. They'll remember if you left them anxious or at ease. And in the end, that memory becomes your true legacy. So here's the challenge. Live as if every interaction plants an emotional seed. Some seeds grow into trust, gratitude, and connection. Others grow into resentment, bitterness, and distance. You are planting those seeds every day, and one day you'll be remembered for the garden you left behind. Choose wisely. Choose to be present. Choose to listen. Choose to respect. Choose to uplift when you can. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be intentional. Because in the end, people may forget your words, but they will never forget how you made them feel. Most people live as if they're trapped in the past or hypnotized by the present. They carry old versions of themselves like heavy luggage, defining their identity by what they used to do, who they used to know, and the mistakes they made years ago. or they live only for the comfort of today, seeking quick pleasures, avoiding discomfort, numbing themselves just to get through another week. But rarely do they live with clarity about the future self they're shaping. And yet, that future self is the one who will inherit every choice you make today. The truth is simple but sobering. You're not just living for who you are right now. You're living for who you're becoming. Think about it. Every action you take is a vote. Every choice you make casts a ballot for the person you will become. Skip the workout. That's a vote for a weaker version of you. Speak with honesty even when it's hard. That's a vote for a stronger, braver version of you. Choose distraction again and again. That's a vote for a smaller, more restless version. No one vote decides your identity, but taken together day after day, they add up. They create the future you'll either be proud of or regret. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that life could end at any moment. His point wasn't to depress himself, but to sharpen his focus. You could leave life right now, he wrote. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. In other words, live today as if it matters for the future self who might not get another chance. Because each day is not just passing, it's shaping. And every action, no matter how small, is an investment in the self you're becoming. Carl Jung put it in psychological terms. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. You cannot rewrite the past. You cannot predict every detail of the future, but you can choose today. And in choosing today, you shape tomorrow. Your past may explain you, but it does not define you. What defines you is the direction you're walking in now. The tragedy is that too many people live as if tomorrow is guaranteed. They think, one day I'll change. One day I'll pursue my dream. One day I'll take my health seriously. But one day is not on the calendar. Today is. And if you're not building toward who you want to become today, you're building toward someone else, someone more complacent, someone more fragile, someone further from the life you say you want. The future is always being built. The question is, by what? By your choices or by your avoidance? By your values or by your fears? Living for who you're becoming means raising your gaze beyond immediate comfort. It means asking not what feels good right now, but what will serve me later. It means recognizing that the small choices matter because they stack. Skipping one workout doesn't matter, but skipping dozens shapes your body. Telling one lie may feel harmless, but repeating it shapes your character. Every decision compounds. Every choice writes a line in the story of your future self. At midlife, this truth becomes sharper, because you've seen enough years to know how fast they go. You've already lived through cycles of procrastination. You've already felt the sting of regret, and you know now in your bones that time is not infinite. That urgency is not a motivational gimmick, it's reality. You are becoming someone with or without your permission. The only question is whether you'll guide that becoming or drift into it blindly. So how do you live for who you're becoming? Start by clarifying the vision. Who do you want to be 5 years from now? Not what do you want to have, but who do you want to be? Do you want to be calm, disciplined, courageous, honest, grounded? Then bring that into today, because you don't magically wake up in 5 years as that person. You become them by practicing those traits now in small, imperfect ways. Want to be disciplined? Then keep a promise to yourself today, no matter how small. Want to be courageous? Then do the uncomfortable thing today, even if your voice shakes. Want to be calm? Then practice letting go of one worry you can't control. Every small act is rehearsal, and the rehearsal becomes the role. The role becomes the identity. The identity becomes the future self. Living for who you're becoming also means letting go of identities that no longer fit. You don't need to keep proving who you used to be. You don't need to keep playing roles that shrink you. Growth requires shedding skins. It requires grieving old versions of yourself with gratitude and then releasing them. That doesn't mean disowning your past. It means refusing to let your past dictate your future. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Don't waste years debating who you could be. Start living it, even in small ways. Because the future isn't an abstract idea. It's arriving one day at a time. And whether you face it with strength or regret depends on how you live now. So pause and ask yourself, if I kept living this exact week, repeated over and over for the next 5 years, who would I become? Would I be stronger or weaker? More fulfilled? Or more bitter? Closer to my values or further away? That question is a mirror. It forces you to confront the truth about your trajectory. And if you don't like the answer, you already know what to do. Change the votes you're casting. Because every choice is a vote. Every action is an investment. Every day is a seed planted in the soil of your future. Live carelessly and you'll harvest regret. Live deliberately, and you'll harvest resilience, strength, and peace. You are not just living for today's comfort. You are living for tomorrow's identity. So don't waste your votes on things that shrink you. Spend them on becoming the person you'll be proud to live as. Because in the end, that future self isn't a stranger. It's you. And the life you'll inherit tomorrow is being built right now, one choice at a time. You've walked through 20 painful truths, and by now you've probably felt the sting of recognition. Some of these truths made you uncomfortable. Some made you nod in agreement. Some made you think of your own life, the missed chances, the wasted years, the moments you know you've been living below your potential. That's the point. Stoicism was never about comfort. It was about clarity. It doesn't sugarcoat life. It shows you reality as it is, sharp edges and all, because only when you see reality clearly can you begin to live freely. And what have these truths revealed? That no one is coming to save you, so you must take responsibility. That life doesn't respond to how you feel. It responds to what you do. That most of your exhaustion isn't from lack of energy, but from scattered attention. That time, not money, is the only currency you'll never get back. That growth always feels like discomfort. And if you avoid it, you avoid becoming more. That you will outgrow people, and that's not betrayal, it's evolution. That weak boundaries create chaos, but strong ones create peace. That you are not what you say you'll do, you are what you repeatedly practice. That most people aren't thinking about you, so you might as well live boldly. That you are shaped by what you consume, which means you must guard your inputs as carefully as your body. That motivation is unreliable, but discipline never lies. that you don't need to control everything, you only need to master yourself, that you're constantly teaching people how to treat you, and your silence is a lesson too. That advice is always filtered through the giver's fears and desires, so you must filter it through your own values. That overthinking is just delayed living, and clarity comes only after action. That you cannot heal in the same place that broke you. You must walk away to breathe again. That your attention sculpts your identity, moment by moment. That confidence doesn't precede action, it follows it. That people will forget your words, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And finally, that you are not just living for who you are now, you are living for the person you are becoming. Taken together, these truths form a mirror. Some reflections will be hard to face, but they are necessary, because every painful truth contains a seed of liberation. When you stop waiting for rescue, you discover your own strength. When you stop chasing motivation, you discover the power of discipline. When you stop trying to control everything, you discover peace. When you stop clinging to the past, you discover the possibility of becoming someone new. That's the paradox. The truths that sting the most are the ones that set you free. So where does this leave you? Not with a checklist, not with a quick fix, but with a choice. You can dismiss these truths, tell yourself they're interesting but impractical, and continue living the same patterns. Or you can take them seriously. You can pick one truth that hit hardest and act on it today. Maybe it's finally setting a boundary. Maybe it's walking away from a place you can't heal. Maybe it's putting down your phone and reclaiming your attention. Maybe it's taking the first small action you've been postponing. You don't need to tackle all 20 at once. Just choose one, because the life you want isn't built in dramatic leaps. It's built in small choices, repeated until they rewrite who you are. You may never feel ready. You may never feel certain, but that's the point. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Stop waiting for the confidence, the motivation, the guarantee. Stop waiting for someone else to hand you permission. Life is too short. The clock is ticking whether you move or not. And the person you are becoming is being shaped right now, in this moment, by what you decide to do next. So the question is, who do you want that person to be? Stronger, calmer, freer? Or more scattered, more resentful, more stuck? The answer isn't in your intentions. It's in your actions. You already know what needs to change. You already know what you've been avoiding. The only question is whether you'll finally face it. And if you want to keep going deeper, if you want reminders that challenge you instead of coddle you, if you want guidance rooted not in shallow self-help, but in timeless wisdom, then stay connected. Subscribe to this channel, StoicCraft, and join a community of people who are choosing to face reality instead of running from it. People who are choosing growth over comfort, discipline over delay, clarity over chaos. Because you don't have to walk this path alone, but remember, subscribing is just the first step. What matters most is what you do after this video ends. Will you scroll to the next distraction? Or will you pause, reflect, and act? The truths are in your hands now. The choice is yours. And your future self is waiting, built, or broken on. The choices you make today. This is StoicCraft, a channel where ancient wisdom meets modern struggle. Here we don't sugarcoat life, and we don't sell empty motivation. We dig into timeless Stoic philosophy, exposing painful truths and showing how they apply to the challenges you face today at work, in relationships, and within yourself. If you're tired of quick fixes and ready for lasting clarity, you're in the right place.